What up, everybody? Welcome to We Lift Big, the fitness, health, and entertainment podcast, whose sole mission is to inspire listeners like you to live a lifetime of health and self-love. I am your host, Bria Gabor, and today's podcast, I want to share with you my training evolution from gym to shelter in place. And I want to share what my workouts look like, what they looked like before, what they look like now, and everything that I've learned and adopted during this past year. And so, diving straight into it, I was inspired to talk about this because, special announcement, I have officially begun my training to compete in a bikini competition in 2021. In fact, my goal is to do 2 to 3 shows, and that will be anywhere between July, August, September, that time. Hopefully things are a little more open come next year at that time. And I am starting to get back into split routine training as part of my training for that. And before I break down what my training is going to look like now, I first want to jump back to March of 2020, before shelter in place was enforced, if we can remember those days. At this time, I was following what is called, again, a split routine, and I first began following this style of training in February of 2018, and so about a month after I started personal training with 24 Hour Fitness. Gosh, I can't believe it's been almost 3 years. So, to define split routine, it is a method of training where you isolate a different group of muscles each day. For example, Monday I would hit back and shoulders, Tuesdays I would hit legs, etc. And the philosophy of this style of training is to work an isolated muscle group to its capacity and then allow that muscle group to rest about 2 to 3 days in which you focus on another part of the body. And the benefit to this is that it provides one of the best balances, in my opinion, of muscle teardown and recovery. So again, you work a muscle group to its maximum, and then you give it 2 to 3 days to recover, to grow, and it is part of that recovery in which we actually build the most muscle. And so during my time training body split, I did what most lifters do, and I focused on how much weight I was lifting. And if that number went up, I felt good. If it stayed the same, or if it went down, I got frustrated. And because I worked at a big box gym at the time, I had a lot of equipment to work with, and so falling into this kind of trap was pretty easy to do. And again, most lifters, I think, make this mistake, I'll call it. And the only reason I call it a mistake is that I feel like a lot of lifters go in with that intention that the only way I can create progressive overload and continue to build my muscles and strength is if I continue to up and up and up the weight. And the truth is that there's so many other factors that attribute into it than just upping the weight. Upping the weight is probably one of the simplest ways to create progressive overload, but there's so many other ways to create this overload that I'll talk a bit about as we move forward with this podcast that I think have honestly benefited my training more than actually increasing the amount of weight that I have on my bar or my dumbbells. It has done more for me in terms of growth and in terms of recovery than just upping the weight in general. So I'll go into that in just a moment. And so when shelter in place was first put into place, I had 3 kettlebells ranging from 15 to 45 pounds. I had a pull-up bar. Actually, I ordered a pull-up bar on Amazon, an indoor bike, and a few resistance bands, and my imagination. So, priding myself in being someone who is skilled in adapting on the fly, I was quick to adjust a lot of what I did in the gym to my new space, which is my small house, a very small house, studio house. And I felt, at the time at least, I still felt very attached to my split routine. And I was kind of in that cycle of like, if I don't keep a split routine, then I'll lose all my growth and muscle. And I was so determined, if not slightly desperate, to maintain all of the growth that I had built over the past 2 years, because it's taken me 2 years to build around 10 pounds of muscle, if not more, which is a lot of muscle to build in that time. I've put a lot of work into this. And so of course, just like anyone who's been working at the gym that hard and has had so much growth over the years, I'm not about to let some house shelter in place situation ruin that for me. And so I kept my split routine, and I started adopting these other methods of creating progressive overload. And 2 of those in particular was incorporating different pieces of equipment for lifts that I would not typically use that equipment for, and for playing with my cadence or my timing, how slow I was going down in my squat. Was I holding in the bottom? Was I coming up slow? Was I squeezing at the top? I started to really pay attention to all of these things, and it made a huge difference in my training, which I will jump into. So when it comes to using different pieces of equipment, I would say one of the most useful tools at my disposal, aside from my kettlebells, were my bands. And I've used resistance bands fairly commonly in my training prior to shelter in place, and they definitely became an integral part of my training during all of this. And the beauty of resistance bands is that they increase tension as you move through a range of motion. And so the best example I like to give is, say you're doing bicep curls. At the top of the curl, so unlike dumbbells or free weights that stay the same weight throughout a range of motion, say again a bicep curl, the band increases in resistance as you pull up and as you come down. And so again, whatever exercise you're doing, the tension is going to increase as you move within that range of motion at the top of your movement, and it's going to decrease as you come down. But again, that tension is always going to be there, versus with free weights, you don't always get that constant tension. Speaking on that more, I feel like bands help someone to naturally achieve that engagement earlier on in an exercise. And so the moment you start to, say, flex your arm again for that bicep curl, you already have tension on the band. And it is something that happens more naturally than, say, again, free weights, where usually I feel like people have to consciously choose to maintain that muscle tension, versus a band, it tends to happen more naturally. Speaking of time under tension, Cadence was another one of my favorite tools to use during this time, and I think it is also a very effective tool. And so again, when it comes to playing with cadence, usually someone might just move through the motions of an exercise and not really play with, okay, let's go down for 4 seconds, let's hold for 4 seconds, let's shoot up for 1 second, or let's come up halfway, come back down for 3 seconds, shoot up. It's really messing with the timing of your exercise. And this was a brilliant way for me to not only really be mindful of my engagement and how I was contracting my muscles, and that time under tension did do a lot to replace the time in which I would usually add weight to the bar. I just held an exercise for longer or took more time to get through it. I will say that half the battle was definitely the mental strain associated with slowing my reps down. A lot of times I ended up using my phone as a timer to track my cadence, because I would get bored or fatigued during my workouts and I wanted to speed up my counting naturally, go 4, 3, 2, 1. It's like, no, okay, the timer will take me there anyways. Slowing down my reps and adding pauses, and again, all these things, again, it helped me establish a stronger mind-muscle connection, which I've been developing over the years in general. As you start to build more muscle, you can gain that stronger sense of, okay, my lats are working. Okay, this is working my quads. This is working my like anterior delt. You get better at that as you go, and playing again with your timing, at least in my opinion, has really helped me develop a much stronger bond to my muscles than when I was just using weight to increase my progressive overload. It also helped me learn a lot about my posture imbalances. Maybe I was leaning too far forward in my squat. Maybe I was pulling my elbows behind me after I got to a certain weight with my bicep curls, in which you want to press the elbows forward. And just these small tweaks, these small changes in my form really started to make a difference. And so when it comes down to it, even though I didn't have the same weights, I was able to maintain my growth a lot better than I first thought I was going to be able to. And it was simply from using these new pieces of equipment, being forced to be creative with my exercises. And so, of course, as gyms start to open up again, these are things that I can take back into my routines, and these are things that I can use to get even better at the lifts that I was already doing. And that's exciting to me. So I will say another thing that I incorporated during all of this shelter in place is I have been spending a lot of time outdoors and incorporating walks and hikes into my routine, as well as running. And this definitely started as more of a mental thing, where I did not realize, did I really think about how much I was moving around 24-hour fitness. And so the 24-hour fitness that I worked at is a pretty massive gym. And so from the front desk to the trainer area to the weights, and I was just walking all the time. And so to go from that to a couple 100 square foot studio house and having that be the only place I was moving was a huge change. And I'm not a person who can just sit there and be within a small space. I have to move, I have to do things, I have to get places. And so I began spending a lot of time outdoors. And so usually it was my goal to go on a walk 2 to 3 times a day, even 4 times a day if I was feeling especially restless that day. Each walk was about 20 to 30 minutes each. I tried to usually get a mile in, get my steps in. And over time, I started to eventually incorporate running. And this is actually something that was very exciting for me, because after I had my knee surgeries about 9-10 years ago, I never really thought I was going to be able to run. I could do everything else. I could squat, I could even jump, I could do lunges, but running was just this one thing that kind of continued to mess with my knees. And through bodybuilding style training, through split routine training, I was able to build enough muscle and stability in my knees alongside the indoor cycling to a point to where I was able to run a little bit further every day. Until now, I can happily say that 5 miles is a pretty easy run for me. And that's wild. I didn't imagine being able to say that a year ago, but the fact I can say that now is freaking awesome. And so to keep moving onward, I pretty much kept my split routines going. I was doing a lot of outdoor hikes outside, and this really kept on until July. And right around June, July time, I got access to more equipment, including a barbell and some dumbbells. And at this point, I was honestly feeling pretty discouraged. Even though I had kind of set up these new ways of targeting my muscles, the whole split routine thing just started to get draining. And I could feel that even though I was getting stronger in some places, I wasn't getting stronger in others, especially my lower body. It's just really hard to replicate that amount of weight in timing, and then your workouts just end up taking close to 3 hours, which I don't always have the mental capacity for, especially when I'm alone in my house. And so I decided now was a good time to mix things up. And just jumping back to me competing in 2021 for bikini, this is something I've known that I wanted to do since I did my first show in May of 2019. And I knew I was going to take a year off and let my body recover, and then I was going to jump into it this coming year. And so with that in mind, I figured now would be the best time to try something new, to train in a way that I wouldn't typically train, and to learn like a new way of training and see how my body adapted to it. And so this is when I started doing more full body days. And so what this looked like was I would train instead of 5 to 6 days a week, it was 4 to 5 days a week, at least in terms of strength training, and 3 days a week. So on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I would train with heavier weights, and on Tuesday, Thursdays, I would incorporate more calisthenic work. And calisthenic work just means that you're using your own body weight to build muscle and strength. And so push-ups, air squats, jump squats, body weight lunges, all of that good stuff, pull-ups. And I would do that. And this was also around the point that I was kind of transferring from hiking to running outdoors. And I've talked about split routine versus full body routine before on my channel. And when it comes to split routine, I do think it is one of the most effective ways to build muscle. And full body routine is really good if you aren't able to spend 5 to 6 days in the gym for an hour to 2 hours. And so with that, I did know that going into this training, I was probably either going to maintain the muscle that I had, or I was going to potentially lose a little bit of muscle. But at the time, I was okay with that just because I needed to do something new at this point. I couldn't just keep trying to hit my arms alone in my house. I needed something that was going to keep me a little more engaged, my full body engaged. And so these full body routines really allowed me to do that. And that's actually what I've been doing for the past 5 to 6 months, is I've been doing these 3 heavier days a week, 2 lighter days a week, and then sprinkling 2 to 3 runs in throughout that. And what I did really love about this training is partially just the newness of it, because again, I was so used to hitting one body part at a time that to hit a little bit of everything, it felt a little more athletic to me. I enjoyed the explosive nature of it, and hitting a different body part each exercise. And so just everything about it felt new, and it was fully engulfing. And I felt like just mentally as much as physically, that was something that I needed. I gained a lot of endurance, and honestly, it made me feel pretty badass because I was incorporating jumps, I was incorporating walking push-ups, and doing all these exercises that wouldn't typically fit into a split routine. And so it was a really nice shift, and it is something I learned a lot about it. And again, it did allow me in many ways to continue to get to know my body, because with hitting the same body part, so hitting my whole body 4 to 5 days a week, even though I had those lighter calisthenic days in between, I was still hitting legs 4 to 5 days a week. I was still hitting some shoulder exercise or bicep or abs or my butt like 4 to 5 days a week. And so it forced me to be creative and like, what are different ways that I can hit these muscles without doing the exact same exercise? And so say Mondays I would squat, Tuesdays I would do like a jump squat. It allowed me to really mess with how I was hitting my body parts throughout the week versus hitting one body part just twice a week. And I learned a lot from it. It felt really, really good. And looking back, I think that the full body routine that I was doing was a better way to keep exercise in my life through COVID and through shelter in place, because again, I didn't always have access to a lot of equipment, the same equipment that I did when I was working at a big box gym. And so again, having to be creative, having to incorporate like plate slides and more of the band work that I hadn't done as much before. Because I couldn't hit my body in the same way that I would with the equipment that I had, it allowed me to find new ways to target my body and target my muscle growth and target my agility that I wouldn't necessarily have explored had I still have been at the big box gym that I was working at. and it felt really nice to be able to break out of my routine and try something completely new. Flash forward to now, I am jumping back into my split body routines, and I am really, really excited. It honestly feels so good to be back, and I feel like I have a renewed sense of like, yes, today's leg day. We're gonna hammer the crap out of my legs. Let's go. And it's something I hadn't really felt for a while. And so it feels really nice to be back into that. And I'm just really excited in general to be starting my journey to competition. And that is something that I really want to record as much as I can. I really want to document my journey just to share it, because having been through this journey once before, it taught me so much, and it was a wild ride, and I want to show you what that looks like. So what does it mean to have such discipline where your workouts and your food and the science behind all of that, and just how to sculpt this perfect physique, or how do I sculpt the best physique possible for my body? How do I recover? How do I work through that mentally? Because it is one of the hardest things I know that I have ever done, and I'm doing it again. So I know it's going to be a wild ride, but I am so thrilled to start in this again. What I really want you all to get from this is, especially during this time and during this year, I hope that you are not afraid to try new methods of exercise and new things that you haven't done before. If you haven't been doing that, if you've spent these past several months trying to stick to the same thing, then it's time to break out. Try something new. Keep trying new things. And I'm sure many of you have. I mean, gosh, by month 2 or 3, I was like, let's do all of these things that I have never done before. And it's been amazing. It's been such a place of growth. And so if you have been trying new things, but maybe you've been on the same track for a while, do not be afraid to try something new with your exercise routines. It is not going to throw off your results. I feel like I am such a stronger lifter because I allowed myself this time to try a totally different style of training. And I think it is going to make me stronger going back to split routine. I think that I am a stronger lifter now than I was. And I have all these new tactics from the full body routines that I am going to take with me into this new chapter in my journey. And so, thank you so much for listening. I love you all so much. And I am looking forward to closing out this year with a big bang. We are 1 month away, and I wish you the best. Please have a beautiful rest of your weekend and your week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.